question or two before I turn it over to you. Towards the beginning of the film, you say, I kept filming. It gave me a reason to be there. And I'm wondering if actually both of you could talk a little bit more, just a little bit more about what it meant to you to be filming during this period.
Actually, since the revolution started in 2011, when we heard that our lives, all as Syrians, is very literally cheap, and as cheap as it is for the regime, but it's very valuable for all of us, that we are really dying for something very important. And gradually with the time, like you feel that any 1 minute you are living, it could be the last minute. And for that, you're doing everything you can as much as you can. So even if you are like tired or sad or happy or whatever, you feel that this is the last minute. And just the fact that when we woke up in the morning, he go to the hospital, so I was like just saying goodbye in the way that maybe we will not see each other like again. So it's more about, like living this moment exactly without thinking at all with tomorrow or like maybe after an hour or whatever. And that's what I feel that gives me all this strength through the whole years, that I'm just feeling that this is the last minute and I should just have it as much as I can.
Actually, being with her through all those years with the camera was really pain. Because if I'm getting up, going to the hospital, wait, just bring my camera, say bye-bye. I'm not going to die, please. I don't want to get back, prepare lunch. To be frank, I couldn't really, at the time, I didn't really see the value of capturing all the moments, because I feel like I don't want just to be trapped in memories. I want to focus for the next day, the next year. We're in this revolution, we're fighting against the regime. We will just to stay strong. I don't want just to look at Rais and Mahmoud and Omar pictures and be whining. They died for a cause and I want to continue fighting for this cause. But after we were out of Aleppo, I'm very grateful to what she has done. And just having all those memories to show, to see, to look at, and to see our daughters when they grow up, or for the next generation, and then for their both cooperating to produce this film, I feel very, very grateful and feel ashamed of how I was.
So tell me, obviously, when you were filming that moment to moment, and then you got to London. Tell me a little bit about how you decided to take all that footage and make it into a feature film, and Edward, maybe you can talk about how you got involved in the project.
When we went out and we left, as much as we were very happy that we are alive, but at the same time we were really shocked because we've never thought that we will make it out. And then I was more feeling very bad when we started discussing the idea about the film, and I should go back and gather all the footage that I have, which is organized in a very bad way. No one ever can understand or see or really. Sometimes I was filming something and when I'm back, I was, Hamza, where I put this one? Where is it? And I really don't know. So still a little bit where I don't know until now where are they. And then Ed can speak about his suffering with organizing this and start how many footage we went through during the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, she had, if you think she was filming a little bit every day over 5 years, it was over 500 hours or something like that. Even when we finished the process right at the end, in fact, a couple of months ago, she was like, oh, here's a couple of other clips, why didn't we ever use them? And I was like, I didn't see these, It was just an extraordinary archive. And yeah, we've been working on it for 2 years. I only got involved because I cared passionately about what was happening with the Syrian revolution from the beginning, and really I wanted to tell the story of people like Wad and Hamza because, as I think you guys have seen in the film, so often we hear about Syria only in the context of terrorism or the refugee crisis, but actually what you see in this film is that Syrians are people just like us, like you, with the same dreams, the same sense of humour, you know, the same jokes. And they were simply peacefully protesting for basic things that we all take for granted, just human dignity and basic rights. And they were being met with the most overwhelming military force that any peaceful protesters, I think, have ever been met with. And so I was passionate about telling that story, and I was very privileged, you know, to have the opportunity to work with these two to tell them.
One of the things I love so much about the film is that amazing balance that you've achieved of showing that humor in everyday life and yet like the horror and devastation. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit just about how you worked together to come to that perfect balance.
Actually, this balance was in our life there, as anyone can see. It's not just like the footage that I capture, but also there's a lot of scenes behind, which people just keep saying jokes and keep just wants to live. And the fact that we really do believe that we survive because of that sense of the humor that we have. And not just us or Salma Afra or their kids or the people around, but literally everyone who lived under bad circumstances and he forced to live in this situation. He knows that this is the only way to be survived. And when we start working on that, we were trying to not focus on this much more than the other, but it's just the way to see how the whole life for people like us living through this experience, and we were just, as I mentioned, just trying to live our life normally. And you know,
it was the truth. You know, I've spent 12 years making films in conflict zones, and I think so often films are focused on the dark and the horror of those kind of situations, but actually my personal experience was that actually conflicts also bring out the finest parts of humanity, like the humour, like the courage, like the selflessness that you guys showed for each other and for your friends. And so I think what we felt was, in getting that balance, we were just expressing, as you say, the truth of that human experience in those zones, which is not entirely bleak, but actually, you know, shows human qualities as well as their darker side.
Okay, I could keep going on, but I'm sure you guys have questions too. So I'm just gonna ask, I'm gonna anticipate that other people seeing this film like I do will be like filled with this feeling of like, okay, but what can I do? What should I do? And I'm wondering what you would like audiences to take away from the film.
the first thing, like the fact that what you've seen in the film is a story, and it's ended up with us both here, like in London, now here, and the other family now in Turkey, in Gaziantep, and everything is fine, and we will survive, and we've really protected, and we are okay. But the fact of the true story of what's going on in Syria is we were lucky enough to be survived, but there's now more than 3 million people, civilians, who's living in a place called Idlib. Idlib is just a city, really represents Syria, small Syria. Everyone who was displaced from Aleppo, from Ghouta, from old city in Homs, from Daraa, they are living now in Idlib. And as you're watching this, it's still happening until now. Today in the morning, more than 54 people were killed in an attack on countryside of Idlib called Ma'arat al-Nu'man. And 54, it's just like, you know, I'm sorry for this, but it's, imagine if 4 or 5 rows or where you are sitting, it's just bodies. And these people are having families, having children, and these people just like don't have that chance to be out as we have it. So it's more about the story of what we've went through. It didn't end, it's still happening every day. And unfortunately, like the world's still watching the news and just ignoring that. What we've tried to do in the film is going to see people, meet people, and tell them directly about this experience. Provide them this chance of getting into an eye from inside and see that experience and go through this and imagine themselves as like you were all in this situation like me inside. And you can now literally understand what does that mean for others, women and mothers and parents to feel through this horror and this like ugly war. And what we can do really is just, for example, the first thing and the easiest things to do to speak about what's going on in Syria as not a civil war. It's revolution, started revolution and continuing until now for people fighting for the basic things of their lives. Like what you are, people here in San Francisco and US fighting for their freedom and their dignity and their better future, they are having the same thing. I will maybe mention more about the impact campaign that we are trying to do. And you want to speak a little bit about Stockholm hospitals?
So always tell me what to say. So unfortunately, as Waad said, the horror hasn't been, it's not finished yet. Maybe our story is ended and we are out of Aleppo. We're kind of safe, but out of our home. But there are two things, main things that everyone should have in mind. First one is we need to bring justice for the people. For example, Omar, who was like 23 years old and he was killed. He was dreaming to become an architect. He should be with us here today in this Q&A, speaking about his experience, but he's killed. We need to bring justice for those people. Maybe it's not today, maybe not next year, but after 10 years, as a humans, all together, we need to bring justice to those people, the accountability for all the war crimes that happened in all Syria and other parts of the world. And for the time being, in the past 3 months, more than 26 health facilities were targeted in Idlib and Idlib countryside. And unfortunately, the regime is also leading the same propaganda that he led in Aleppo, that they are all terrorists. They are all now al-Nusra because the ISIS propaganda has finished. So now they are all terrorist group. While they are civilians, there are also some militias that are terrorists, that are Islamics, jihadists, but there are civilians, and it's not their fault that they became, they are from this city, they are from this area. They can't just flee away and go because Al-Assad wants to control all of Syria.
The only thing as well that I would like to say is just one of the things I hope you take away from all of this is people think in our countries in the West that Syria is kind of over there, it's happening over there, there's no right, there's no wrong, it's just another disaster. And I hope what you've seen in this film is that, as we said before, this has happened to people very much like you. And when we start joining the dots and we look at our own societies and you think about how ISIS gained strength and gained ground in Syria, the refugee crisis began in Syria, and when you think about how ISIS and the refugee crisis have affected our own politics, you begin to draw the dots in terms of how the war in Syria has had a direct effect on all of our lives in San Francisco, in America, in the UK. We can no longer live in a world where we look at the suffering of people in Syria or in other places and think, oh, it's such a disaster, that's happening for them, I'm so sorry, but I'll continue my life over here. We're connected, fundamentally, and I think you guys are sort of the ambassadors for this story. You've seen the truth, I think, of the Syrian conflict, and I hope you'll go out today, each one of you individually, and not only encourage people to look at the film, to follow us on Twitter, to look at our impact campaign, but also just to say, there are links. We have a stake in the fate of the Syrian people. It affects us. And we don't have easy answers for what we should do to fix these issues, but we need all of us to try to work it out, because we're all basically in it together.